I like to pass the floor to the regional coordinator for the Peer Support Specialist Network of Maine, Catherine Storer. She's going to say a few words.
No, I think, thank you, Angie. I really appreciate it. I think I would like to just go to the panel and get questions in the box and have a discussion. If we could do that, that'd be great.
So I'm going to introduce all the panelists and then we will start the discussion right off. So first we have Martha Barbone. Did I say your last name right? Oh. Did I? Okay, I hope. She is a veteran of the United States Air Force and spent 15 years in the mental health treatment, including many hospitalizations, medications, and other therapeutic interventions before discovering peer support. This led to a newfound hope and discovery of inner strength. She has worked providing peer support and training in clinical and peer-run organizations. She's directed the Certified Peer Specialist Training in Massachusetts and more recently worked for the National Association of Peer Supporters. She uses her voice to advocate for systems change. Next, we have Ebony Flint. Ebony identifies as a trauma survivor, having overcome the struggles of a life from a young age. She spends much of her time teaching strategies to help others navigate and address emotional and/or mental distress and other challenges. She is deeply passionate about this work as a parent of a child with special needs and as a person who has overcome traumatic experiences herself. Ebony is a certified peer specialist, a peer group facilitator and trainer. She has experience working with people both in community and hospital settings. Ebony is also the Central Massachusetts Outreach Coordinator for Massachusetts Families. She assists in developing programming and connecting resources with families of marginalized communities seeking support and connection via that platform. Ebony also has a teenage daughter and resides in Central Massachusetts. She loves laughing, learning new things, watching UFC, and sarcastic t-shirts. And last, we have Kevin Fitz with a very tiny bio. He's the executive director of the Oregon Mental Health Consumer Association, but he will tell you more in just a second. And me, you saw part of my story in the film. I'll be moderating tonight. I'll say a few words if I can, but mostly it's up to all these wonderful people. All right, so now I'm going to pass it to each one of the panelists. If you just want to say a few opening thoughts, like maybe what you thought of the film, anything we should know about you that was left out of your bio, and then we will move on to questions. Again, if you are in the audience and you want to be on camera, raise your hand and I will bring you on. Let's start with Ebony.
Thank you. I'm just happy to be here. My bio was long, so I don't think I need to add anything. But as someone who has been off of psychiatric drugs for the last 4 years, I can relate to a lot of things in the film, and I'm just glad to be here on the panel. So thank you.
Martha.
Yeah, I'm really glad to be here. And I guess the only thing I would add is when I sought help for what I would call like emotional distress, I was working full time. I was raising my kids. I hadn't thought of suicide. And like 3 weeks later, I was suicidal and completely disabled. And it never occurred to me that when I sought professional help, that it wouldn't help. I believed everything they told me. So I learned differently, but it took years.
And Kevin, you get to fill us in because I didn't have your bio. What would you like us to know about you and your sarcastic t-shirts also?
Yeah, just probably next time I do this, probably not have a bio and just go by like a one-word name like Cher or Sting or something. So it's just kidding. My name is Kevin. I live in Portland, Oregon. I'm both a psychiatric survivor and a mental health consumer. I have worked in the area of developing peer services, system advocacy, individual advocacy, junior clinician, information referral, an awful lot of stuff in public mental health, particularly in Oregon, but mostly for the last 15 years, mostly working on system advocacy, and even more concertedly in the last 7 or 8 years, particularly with a focus on changing state program services and funding through our state house doing political legislation activities. So I'm glad to be here. One of the things about this film, when this is the second or third showing, it brings up an awful lot. I used to be called a crusader on this issue, and I first came to be aware of this by a book called Toxic Psychiatry by a doctor named Dr. Peter Bregan. And it just stirs up in me the sense of this is such an important issue. So many people that I know and care about, plus me, have been through this merry-go-round. And the sense when I first started being educated about it and reading what I thought was important science, that I needed to change the world on this issue. And it just brought back that sense of this is so crucial. I need to scream to the mountaintops this. And, that was started on that crusade in 1987. And so I've gone back and forth about, is this hopeless? Should I talk about it? Blah, 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 ongoing. And so anyway, I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
All right, so we'll start the discussion off. And we don't have any questions yet, so I'm going to ask you a question from my brain. Well, let me ask, wait, Kelly or Monica, do you have a question since you are both on? One of you? No? Okay. So I'll ask a question from my own brain. All right. How do your own experiences inform your work as a peer support specialist? Ebony, Martha, Kevin.
For me, I just, as we do as peer specialists, I try to share my experiences and things I've been through, but explore with whoever I'm supporting what might be helpful for them. I don't deny the things, good, bad, or indifferent, that happened to me while on psychiatric drugs, but I make sure to share that. That's how I feel I'm helping with the information.
Yeah, I would echo that. And I think one of the most difficult things is when I see something happening that happened to me and I don't want it to happen to that person, and how not to become the fixer in that situation, because that's not my role in peer support, but to be able to explore that with the person to see if that's something they want to change or want to get more information on. So sometimes I really have to check myself because I want to no, don't do that. But that's not my role. And so, yeah. And it can be really tough if you see someone, to honor self-determination, if you really think someone's not making a good choice, but I'm still going to honor self-determination. So.
Kevin, what are you thinking? What is that? We can't hear you. Is that you as a kid?
Can you see this picture?
Yes.
So this woman, how does this inform my work? This woman I met in 1990. I was working at a consumer-run drop-in center. It was sort of pre-peer workforce stuff, but consumers and survivors providing services. I worked at a drop-in center. I met this woman. She was a volunteer at her organization. And like I said, previously, for the previous 2 years, I'd been on a crusade wanting to educate everybody, particularly about the damage that neuroleptics can do to the body, but also particularly benzodiazepines and how challenging they can be to get off, how addicting they can be, et cetera. My friend, this woman, Melinda Rawlings, when she was a volunteer at this consumer drop-in center, she started getting benzodiazepines for anxiety by her doctor. And I was very concerned because she was on this, I've seen this with two other of my friends, but all of them are dead now and died very soon after having this experience. She got significantly medicated on benzodiazepines, antipsychotics, and antidepressants, and then would vacillate between dumping these things because they made her feel horrible and dead inside, and then moving into, unfortunately, the use of street drugs to maybe bring herself back to life or whatever. And then this vacillation in between her parents, her authorities, her doctor, pushing her back into psychiatric compliance with her medication, her saying, these things are driving me crazy and I can't feel my feelings, blah, blah, blah. And then vacillating back and forth into street drugs and challenges, and said to me several times, Kevin, these benzos about 18 months ago. I'm hooked on them, and now I'm using them like crazy and trying to get them on the street. And anyway, it just escalated and escalated. And I sat there thinking, one of my best friends in the world is now struggling with this yo-yo, and I don't know what to do. I am very worried. Ultimately, 3 years later, she died in a phone booth in downtown Portland on a speedball overdose, having just been released from the psychiatric hospital 2 weeks earlier on this merry-go-round. And it's just so many people I know, and 3 good friends of mine have been through that sort of thing. So it informs my work, particularly about, I don't know if, I mean, I love the work they're doing at Inner Compass, but for myself, I'm just particularly trying to focus on little projects that are little side doors to take some pressure relief off of this, because to look at this monster of the chemotherapy to address one's mental and emotional challenges in a way that are so rocked with side effects, that have so many negative consequences for your own emotional processing, just feels like a David and Goliath act. But it's where my heart is. And so I try to keep that in mind of, every day I may be encountering another Kevin or another Melinda, and what can I do in a way. I appreciate what Martha said about appreciating their choice, but in order to make good choices, I have to be informed positively and with good science. And the film makes the point too about marketing and propaganda has destroyed, the idea of what community mental health, the dream of what it should have been. So anyway, thank you.
Well, that's a really good, you guys are all bringing up some really important points, and I want to challenge you. I'm going to give you a hardball question. You ready? Okay. So if you see my experience in the film, I had went 15 years seeing therapists and social workers and peers and all these things, merry-go-round of treatment. And okay, there's something wrong with you. Go to this treatment, go try this therapy, do this retreat. Okay. But nobody ever once said, hey, you need to look at your meds, or how many meds are you on? Or did you read the pamphlet? Okay. So I could argue that if we leave it to self-determination and the goals of the client, could that make us complicit in the harm? So how do you walk that line between honoring someone's goals and their own autonomy versus the complicity?
I would say helping them find the things that used to bring them joy and coming from that. I think when I say self-determination, it's reminding and helping them find their inner wisdom and going off of that. It doesn't mean just being silent. And also this work has impacted me too. It's from going to doing peer support groups and hospitals, working in respites and seeing the actual effects. It's not just death, it's tremors, it's drooling, it's lack of hygiene, it's numbness. Seeing that put a fire under me. And so, yes, when someone else acknowledges that, jump on that and igniting that to help them navigate that. And I think that's possible. It's more self-paced.
What do you think, Martha? Anything?
I would just say honoring self-determination doesn't mean like I'm going to sit by passively and watch something happen. I'll still have the discussion, but where all the other professions, most of the clinical professionals, they say in their code of ethics, they honor self-determination, except when I don't think you're making a good choice. And in peer support, there's no but there. I'm going to give you information. I'm going to support you. But in the end, like, I'm not going to lock you up to prevent you from doing something. I'm not going to steal your psych drugs so you don't take them anymore. I'm not going to take action, exert power over you because I don't think you're making a good choice. And that can be hard because people can make choices I wouldn't make. But in my role, like, that's one thing I have to figure out how I'm going to deal with if someone makes a choice that I wouldn't want them to make. And, part of it too is talking to the providers. Like, I'm not going to stand by and watch people get overprescribed things without talking to providers about what they're doing and the impact it has. And when I worked on an inpatient unit, that was the hardest thing. They let me, in my peer support role, they would let me do whatever I want. I could talk about anything I want, I could, but they weren't really interested in listening to what I had to say about how they could change. But I wouldn't sit idly by and let them do that. I would call them on that all the time. And, did I make any change? I can't say, well, look, this completely switched around, but I did have people at least think about it. And, I want change to happen now, and change is slow. I want change in my lifetime, and by my hair, you can see that's, is that going to happen?
Kevin, you got anything to go?
Yeah, the woman that I've talked about, my friend Melinda, one of the things when I first realized she was on benzodiazepines and it looked like it was turning into a situation of abuse and couldn't quit them, is that I connected Melinda and I said, I just want you to talk to my ex-psychiatrist, Dr. John Schenkel, who was then practicing somewhere else. And we called him on the phone and I said, I just want you two to have a discussion. Maybe you could ask him some questions. He could tell you about those sort of things. That conversation was overheard by a board of directors at this consumer-run drop-in center that I was working at. And they said, you were practicing medicine, you were giving medical advice to a volunteer, you are on probation. I said, I was not giving medical advice. I was just taking a person and connecting them with a medical professional who was legitimately able to give them medical advice. That Melinda was interested in learning what they had to say, but I was busted for doing something that was supposedly practicing medicine without a license. What's particularly challenging. One of the things that I get into discussions with other peers is, if I'm dancing in the middle of the freeway with a blindfold on, is that my choice? But maybe that's my choice. The thing where I sometimes run into some of my own feelings about to do anything to get into one's bloodstream or to force something chemically into a person's body is a severe intervention, one of the most severe, I think. But areas of ideas of containment, or if I'm a peer and I'm out walking and I'm going across the bridge and I'm walking with a peer and I'm on the job and that peer decides to, it's my choice, I'm going to heave myself over the railing. I don't think that throw the peer costume in the garbage. My natural instinct as a human being is going to want to save their life, is want to interrupt that choice. And that exists with me also with ideas of myself where I have told my partner, take me to the hospital. I don't want the mind pills. I don't want to make leather belts. I just want to be contained, because I don't, like you said, Angie, in talking about in the film about these horrible thoughts in your head, and here you are going to school, dropping off the niece and all that sort of stuff, is the same thing. To the degree where I'm like, oh, I need somebody to contain me. I need to save my life. The executive command is shot or all skittish or something. And so there's a real gray area for me about, what does that particularly look like if I think my friend is dancing in traffic with a blindfold on? And then also too is, I've always thought with getting enough science in front of somebody will help them make good informed choices. And sometimes most of the time that's not been the case. They'll read the science or maybe take a look at it. But then also too is, what is the authority of a high school dropout, a AWOL military disabled guy versus a guy who's gone to school for 12 years and is an overpaid pill clerk? I don't have the cred and the status in that sort of arena. So it's challenging. Mostly, I just want to try to be as authentic and share my vulnerability and my care for them. And I think that's some of the stickiest part that makes change. But that's still a struggle for me.
As peers, we definitely share. I would share with someone if I was sad. We miss people, we make connections. That's the first thing. So definitely, I would not just stand there and not say, this is scaring me, this is dangerous. And I can't find my strength if everyone's treating me fragile. I can't expect to guide my life if everyone is answering the questions for me. It's taking away my voice and my choice, and I don't want that. And that's what the pills would do. So no, I challenge you too with that, because I feel there's a way to do that and still have someone hold their authenticity and their autonomy, even if it is to twirl around in the middle of the street.
Good point. Kelly, did you have something? It looked like you were raising your hand. The floor is yours.
Yeah, I first of all, I appreciate, Angie, that you were in this video. I think some of this was presented at NARPA a couple of years ago by the doctor that that was in there with you.
We
But
tried.
she taught
We tried to get into NARPA, but they we didn't get admitted when I tried a couple years ago. So if somebody mentioned it, it was just by accident.
I think the doctor might have mentioned it. Anyways, what I really like about this film is that you've got a lot of docs in there, a lot of docs really speaking about this damage. And I think that's what can be really helpful in changing the system, is that docs listen to docs, peers listen to peers, case managers listen to case managers. And so I think this can really be a tool to really change some things. I work for a state entity, and most of our peer supports are within mental health agencies, and even the peer supports that aren't within mental health agencies, nobody wants to talk about medications. There's, it's fear about, we don't talk about meds. That's something to talk to your doc about. And in our training, we talk about, you can still talk about what it's feeling like to be on these meds. You can still talk about what you want to do about these meds. Not for me to say this med's good, this med's bad, these are the side effects, but it is to be able to challenge some assumptions. And part of our hope in having peers working within the mental health system is to also inform change in the mental health system. But it's scary when you're a peer. This might be the first job you've had in years, or you've ever had a job. And if you're the only peer working in that agency, to be, the rebel there to speak up, that's really challenging. I mean, I lust over the Wildflower Alliance because of your privilege of being able to be 100% authentic.
Yeah. And the one I really respect that. And that for me, I call it what's my line in the sand? And it's different for every person. What am I willing to do while I'm trying to make change? And what is a no-go for me? I'd lose my job before I do that. And that's going to be different for everyone. I need this job. So there's things that, I'm pushing that this really isn't peer values, but I'm willing to do it while I'm trying to bring about change, or no, absolutely not. I'm never going to participate in a restraint. That's my line in the sand. I'll get fired over that. So things like that, and I think each person has to make that decision for themselves. Where do I stand in this? And like we say, change is slow. And if we're not there, if we're not inside that system, to me, that's where I was stuck. And if I hadn't found peer support, I think I'd either be on a backboard somewhere or I'd be dead. And so if we're not in that system where things are happening we don't really like, what do those people have that are in that system? They've got nothing. I had no hope before I met a peer specialist. I had no hope that I'd ever be anything other than a professional patient.
So we have a lot of good questions coming in. I'm going to go ahead and start going down them one at a time. The first two I'm going to combine and ask it into one question. So, is there a low dose of psychiatric medication that can be safe to take small dose and to get off of it quickly? Secondly, onto that, what type of specific questions should you ask your physician when they recommend a certain drug? What should be the frequency of follow-up visits to adequately monitor that newly introduced drug? So does anybody have any experience with that kind of stuff?
Only thing I could offer to that, just because I totally didn't follow the rules with getting off of my medicine, is just that when I did finally find my cocktail, if you will, was when I got my psychiatrist and my therapist on the same page. And that's when things kind of, in the end, it didn't work, but at that time it did. And I was able to get some help because you're able to talk more with your therapist. You only get, like Angie says, the 5-10 minutes with the psychiatrist. And so that for a time was helpful for me. That's really all I could add to that.
Yeah, as far as the first part about, is there a dose that, you know, it's so different for each one of us about if we're going to be able to get off. I got off some things, no problem, and other things, big problems, but other people, it's different. So I don't know of an answer to that question. Is there anything that's okay and safe? You know, I would hope that when something's prescribed, when it's prescribed, part of the discussion is how we're going to get you off. It's not, I'm going to prescribe this forever. I think that should be part of the discussion. I'm going to prescribe this. We're going to try this for 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, but then we're going to talk about how to get you off. And, you know, as far as what questions, I mean, there's actually, you know, for true informed consent, not only do you need to be told what the benefits are of taking this drug and what are all the drawbacks, what are all the potential bad effects of taking this drug. You also need to be told what the other options are. Are there other drugs? Are there other treatments? What happens if you do nothing? Take nothing, do nothing. You're supposed to be told all of that as part of the informed consent process in a way that you can understand it, not using fancy words, in a way you understand. Now, to truly do that, that takes a lot of time. I don't think I've ever experienced informed consent with psych drugs. I think the closest I ever came was when I had a knee replacement, and my orthopedic surgeon actually spent the time and went through all of that. And I'm like, wow, I've never had that before. But, you know, so, you know, there's not time to go through that. And I've even had doctors say, you know, don't read the package insert. It will just make you scared. Well, stuff is there for a reason. And, you know, yeah, okay, maybe it's rare. Maybe it's 1 in a million. If I'm the one, do I care that it's 1 in a million? You know, I should have that information to be able to make that choice myself.
Kevin, do you have any thoughts on meds?
Can you repeat the second part of that question? Because I think I had something.
It was, wait. It was, what type of specific questions did you ask your physician when they recommend a certain drug, and what should be the frequency of follow-up visits?
Yeah, so just want to pick apart that and answer part of that. One of the, I as far as telling people what is safe and not safe, I don't want any responsibility for that. But around one of the things I learned, I don't think I've ever had informed consent, except if I wanted to read the insert, I could do it. But particularly permission to embarrass myself. Is that all right, Angie, right here, right now? I started taking an SSRI called Zoloft, did not know about it, got a prescription from my primary care doctor. I learned about the side effects, not from him telling me about it, because I was dating a young woman. I was young at the time, I think 3-4 weeks into dating. And I realized that the doctor did not tell me, but that Zoloft was causing problems with certain kind of physical functioning. And I called him, and I was sure that at 23 years old, that this Zoloft had ruined my libido, or its ability to take it to the dance floor, so to speak. And I was like, oh my God, my life is over. What in the hell? This thing has ruined me. And then I called him on the phone. I thought, I got to get off this stuff. This is not good. And then he said, oh, by the way, this has been known to cause problems in men's male functioning, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, Jesus. I think that that's particularly important, and those things should be told, particularly young people who are getting to know people and dating and active and sexually active. And I wasn't told. It was only through back, like, oh God, I'm having this horrible symptom. What in the world does it matter? So it's, yeah, so that's, I hope that's not too personal.
No, I'm glad you shared that, because that's one of the lasting effects that I still have, is it just completely wiped out my sexuality. I've lost my 30s, and now I'm halfway, almost halfway to my 40s, totally gone. And it's something that I want to talk about more because nobody talks about it. So I just appreciate you bringing it up. It's we shouldn't have shame about it, if possible. It's a consequence that we weren't warned about. All right, here comes a siren going by. I hope you all can't hear that, but
yeah, I just wanted to use appropriate metaphors, not to get too graphic.
I was thinking we're beating around the bush.
Yeah.
I thought, he's beating around the bush, just say it. All right. Okay, so the next comment, this is kind of a somber. So there are 1 in 5 Americans in the situation, including me. I've struggled to get off a minor dose of an antidepressant and have been disabled and unable to function as a result. And I have gone back on to be able to maintain my life, work, be a friend, and a parent. I would like to hear about options to move through a taper and function in a culture that is rampant with loneliness, isolation, and a lack of support and understanding, and how to move through and out of this dilemma. I'm looking for a message of hope and faith about this problem and how to seek support and solutions. That's an excellent question. Who would like to go first?
I would just say, you've hit the nail on the head with it being very lonely and the real need for community with this to go through it. To be able to talk to other people about what they're dealing with and ways they've gotten through it. And that's why some of the things like Inner Compass and some of the other, online groups are really good that way. There's also, and Angie, you may know, I don't know the best way to find it, but there are psychiatrists that really do know how to do tapers and things. Most psychiatrists aren't trained in deprescribing. They're trained to give us meds, not to stop them. But the ones that are, there's ways you can do it. I know there's, and I'm not going to get into the names because I'm not a prescriber, but there's ways to use different combinations of meds that helps through that. And and sometimes to get off some of this stuff, it does disrupt your life. It's like, I have to take 3 months off of life right now to get off this drug. And can I do that? No, I can't. So I stay on it. And, it's really bad that we're put in that position. And, hopefully things like this film and getting more and more of the providers on board that this is a big problem. Now, at least they're recognizing like discontinuation syndrome and things like that. Hopefully there'll be more and more emphasis on how to get people off safely, instead of all the emphasis on how to get people on more. But, I would really reach out and try to build community around that. I know like with Wildflower Alliance, they have a support group about coming off drugs, and it's just to explore all things, in a mutual way, sharing resources, looking for information. It's been especially bad. I think, the world saw what it was like in this pandemic, what it's like to be isolated and alone. And a lot of us have dealt with that for years when it wasn't a pandemic. And this just made it worse. And I never thought I could find peer support like this in Zoom, and I don't love it, but it's better than nothing. So, I'd encourage, how do you find the community? How do you find that buddy that will go through it with you? And through word of mouth, find the prescribers that can really support you through that. I know when I was coming off, I told my psychiatrist I wanted to do it, and she deprescribed, but she didn't have any idea how to do it. And she told me it was against medical advice. And, I asked her 2 questions. before I started, I said, are there any long-term effects of being on SSRIs? And will I have withdrawal? And she flat out said no to both of those. And she could have said anything else, and I would have been okay with it. But when she said no to both those questions, I knew I wasn't going to get real support from her. Like, she would go along with it, but she wouldn't be of help to me if I was having trouble. And I was afraid to tell her about some of the withdrawal symptoms I was having for just what we've talked about. Well, that's a sign you need to go back on. And I'd end up back on, or even on more than I was. So I didn't tell anybody. And I wouldn't recommend that. You got to have somebody to tell, because carrying this stuff around by yourself doesn't make it go away.
I'm going to share a little bit, because that question just really hit me in a place. Where do I start? I would just say that I just think it's unfair. I mean, I'm reading between the lines in the question, but I guess I'm seeing myself in it, that I bought into a system that was supposed to help me. I was vulnerable. I was sick. You know, I was traumatized. I was all those things. And I was like, help me, help me. I don't know what to do with these feelings. And I don't even know what I'm feeling. And I just need help, you know? So then I don't know. I became severely, chronically serious mental illness. It's all over my record. I was the one that was drooling on myself. I had dreadlocks in my hair because I wasn't bathing, you know, and nobody noticed. I was just kind of thrown away, you know? And then to slowly, I think it just began, there was something inside of me that was like, something is not right. I didn't know what it was. I just knew something wasn't right. So I started like seeking other kinds of treatment, you know, like peer groups, equine therapy, a service dog. I started seeking all these things. Like, I don't feel good. I don't know what it is, but I need to help myself, you know? And then I think I took a harm reduction approach. So I didn't have the goal, like, I want to get off meds. That was not even in the realm of possibility in my head. It was just, I need to take less, I guess, you know? So I put in the comments, the harm reduction guide by Will Hall, because I want to emphasize that, you know, coming off meds might not be for everyone. It might be so excruciatingly painful that you would kill yourself. And so I never want to push like everybody needs to come off their meds in order to recover. Like, that's just not true, right? So there's a huge range of experience. So harm reduction is like super important. You know what I mean? Like, everybody should know what it is, that it means like, hopefully we should be able to take as least amount of a drug possible that would give us the most benefit. And if that means coming off, that's for you. It's individually based, you know, it's up to you and your choices and your informed choices of what you want to do with your body, you know? Okay. But, God, and sorry, sometimes when I get really passionate, I get scattered. Okay. But, so anyway, yes, this was the most lonely experience I've ever had in my entire life. And what made it most lonely was none of my providers believed me because, like I said, I was labeled seriously mentally ill. I had multiple diagnoses. So without peer support, I'd be dead. And the peer support came in the form of online community, on forums, of people coming off meds, of people like Martha that would talk to me when I was upset. You know, I knew, this is the scariest thing I could tell you. I knew that if I were to tell a provider how I was feeling, like the scene of that movie where I'm saying all these thoughts that I'm having, I knew the minute I did that, I would lose my autonomy. I would be put back on meds and I'd probably die. I knew that deep down. And to have a system like hovering over you and you know that is extremely isolating. Like, there's no pill for me to, there was a realization I had in my living room. Oh my God, I'm off my meds. There's no pill I can take that can take this away. My brain is completely damaged. There's nobody for me to talk to. If I tell somebody, I'm gonna be put away. Holy shit. Like, my brain blew up when that happened to me. And this is me with a psychology degree that never even heard of withdrawal. I'm like, what is this? Okay. So yes, it is extremely isolating. I don't know. Yes, all of that. And still, the strength of the human spirit shows itself to me every single day because people do it despite of all of that. And they come out of the other side. Some don't. And I see a lot of suicide also. And of course, their mental illness is blamed and not a withdrawal regimen that was too fast. It's never blamed like that. It's always the person was mentally ill. Oh, the bipolar got him, or whatever they want to say. Anyway, oh God, I could just keep talking about that. Okay, sorry. Does anybody want to add to that? And then I'll move on to the next question.
I just want to say in relation to that, whether the grass is greener or not, what I think once and for all we ought to just put to bed the idea that there is some normal, that we are not able to get to, whether it's drug withdrawal or change lifestyle, whatever. I'm not sure the grass is always greener. I think there's two kinds of people in the world. One that I crudely call the neurotics and one that I call the psychotics. And the psychotics is just a neurotic whose balloon is popped. Put enough pressure on any neurotic who, the difference between a neurotic and me is I think they're just better at stuffing their thoughts and stuffing their feelings and walking around, like they got it all handled. Something, like the crack in my egg, I could no longer hide it. What also too is I don't think that some people, and even me, the last drug I titrated off of was Zyprexa, I didn't know how hard it was going to be and how wide open it has made my emotional experience. Angie, if I told a provider what I was thinking last night, they would have me committed for 2 weeks. I mean, they would have me locked up right now.
Same. Same. Oh my God. All right, so let's move on to the topic of medical professionals. People are asking, has this film been shown to doctors and psychiatrists, and what was their response or reaction to the film? I can answer that one, but let's go to this one first. The movie showed how medical professionals were uncommitted on how to taper off and how to get off the medications. Does that go on regularly? So if you all could share your experiences, maybe in talking to providers or what you've seen in peer support with people and their providers, and as far as withdrawing from meds.
For me, I just kept getting this, another medication for every symptom, and started to believe that that's what I needed. And I just had a cycle of I didn't want to feel this way, so I'd stop, but then something would happen. And so that meant I needed it. And I went back and forth with that. But for me, with my childhood trauma and then all the medications I was on, I was told that I'd always have to take that. So I didn't bother asking. I knew what I wanted to do. I knew it was going to be hard because every time I tried before, I ended up going back. And I just made sure, like Martha said, I had a community that wasn't going to judge my ups and downs because they were coming. And that irritability was there for a long time. So just fighting through that and pushing through that, the support I sought out was peer support. I did not get that from doctors. I didn't get anything other than this is just what I need to take and what I'll need to take forever to deal.
To the best of my knowledge, when I talk to providers, a lot of them have never thought about deprescribing or even really learned about it. And they, there's a lot that don't believe there's withdrawal. And, and those are the ones we've talked about. If you talk about those symptoms, they blame it on your illness and why you need to take the drug. That's not all of them. There are some that do. But I worked on a research project with the VA and doctors, and they were trying to determine, and this kind of speaks to an earlier question, what's the frequency of visits? And they were like, well, once someone's stable on their medications and, there hasn't been a big event, then we don't need to see them very often. And I said, you might need to see them more because you should be deprescribing then. And they looked at me like I had 3 heads. So, I hope that's one of the things that's going to change, because as in the film, the prescribers that are in that film certainly believe that deprescribing is important.
Kevin?
If all you have is a hammer and everything looks like a nail, my challenge is that I've said over and over again, I have a bias against men. I've just been abused by them. I loathe parts of my own self. But particularly, at least here in Oregon, our psychiatric institutions are dominated by older white men who position themselves as healing individuals. It's hard for me every psychiatrist I've ever met, I probably met 100 and probably been in treatment with 30 of them. I think probably I met probably 2 or 3 of those who I felt like they understood me, did not want to pathologize me. But the rest of them, these are not shamans. These aren't mystics. These aren't healers. These aren't spiritually enlightened people. They're just, like I said, in my sense, have a very narrow focus on take this synthetic chemical. It will do Beelzebub in your mind with your dopamine and your blah, 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 and then you'll be great. To go to those people and put my emotional suffering, my sexual abuse, my all the things that I've been through to a person who's got like a pinhole of, I think chemical B will be good for your rapid bipolaring number 2, plug that right in, good to go. It almost reminds me of the studies that they did on attachment way back in the 40s and 50s, where they replaced the mother monkey and put in a wire monkey with a piece of cloth over it and said, listen, this is better than nothing, so you better go get your milk from that. Sometimes I think that we are going to psychiatrists and pushed there or led there by our own questions for an emotional and mental wisdom and support and cultivation of our own processes there. But that's not what's delivered. And they're all, and the authority, like they're gods. I used to think these people have more power than my priest, than the judge or the cop, and at least with their impact on my life. And I think that all they have is all they have is a pill kit. So everything looks like a pathological disease that can be treated with aggressive synthetic chemicals that bounce around in your neurons. It's just rough.
Yeah, I'll just say, after spending 5 years in the peer groups online for people withdrawing from meds, by and large, most doctors have no clue, or when you tell them you want to taper, they take you off really fast. So I'm not giving you advice here. I'm just telling you what I've seen is that a lot of people learn everything they can about withdrawing, and they learn how to taper, like you saw Shalimar in the film, and they do it at home. And they might ask their provider something like, what do you know about antidepressant withdrawal? And they just wait to see what they say. And if they say, oh yeah, you can get off, no problem, there's no such thing as withdrawal, then you know that provider's not safe. You know what I mean? There is ways to advocate with providers. It's just, we get so upset and passionate that sometimes it can turn them off. But again, I don't ever want to doctor bash, because I feel like they're kind of victims in this too. They just didn't learn. Now, that's not an excuse to not learn eventually. Or to be open to listening to your patient. I mean, that's not an excuse, but unfortunately the profession is behind. And because of that, that is where all these withdrawal communities came from, because there's nowhere for these people to go. So they find each other. And then to answer that last question about, have we shown this to prescribers? Yes. In fact, it is like my life's goal to try to get, like, that's what I do when I'm not doing screenings like this. I'm trying to get us into conferences, get us into I've done like trainings with like social workers, counselors, therapists. We've done lots of groups like that. So this is my secret. I don't think I've ever said this during a screening, but I went back to school to get my master's in social work, but I felt like a double agent, because like I didn't really want to get licensed, but you need those letters to get into places, right? So I felt like my schooling was like, I just need to learn their language so I can fight back. So that's kind of what I did. I don't use those letters unless I absolutely need to. I don't work in the system because I know I couldn't ethically. Like, there's way too many problems that I have with it, that like Martha said, drawing that line in the sand. Like, I'm not going to work somewhere where I have to send somebody to a hospital because they feel suicidal. Like, I'm just not going to do that. But anyway, so a lot of my time is spent writing proposals and getting denied. Or my favorite one was Yale Mental Health Women in Mental Health Conference. I did not get in. And I'm like, 10 years from now, maybe they'll be like, oops, we should have let her in, whatever. But yes, we're trying so hard to educate providers. And I think that's one of the good things about the film, is that it's pretty, I mean, it is kind of controversial, but it's pretty middle of the road. Like, we're trying to bring this to mainstream audiences that don't understand any of this. And it's like an introduction, and we do it very professionally and courteously, but I've seen providers in the chat box get really upset. And I know that that's their cognitive dissonance, so I almost don't get mad about it, because I'm like, something they saw scared them and they're not really sure how to react with that. And like, their paycheck depends on them not knowing this information. So I try to like help them. And I also giggle on the inside, because I think they can't unsee what they just saw. and they're not going to forget me when they see me sitting here looking so much better. And that is the best revenge I can get. You know what I'm saying? I got better in spite of you, not because of you. So, all right. So let's see. What time is it? We got, I don't even know. I'm getting all excited. What do we got? Like 10 more minutes? All right. Okay. So the next one. Wait, I just missed this one. Okay. This is a share. This is 5 topics. This is really good. Number one med caused urges like, I must lay down in front of a train now. And it was shocking to learn that others experience this with the same medication also. Number 2, it's awful to see people with life-threatening health complications with prior authorization delays after a hospital visit release end up in immediate cold turkey withdrawal. Since at that point, insurance won't pay for the med for people on public health plans. Number 3, we have peers with liver and or kidney and or other organ damage. Some were on so many psych meds, up to 8 at a time with severe effects. Number 4, a prescriber insisted on a med that caused tachycardia against the cardiologist order to discontinue. Number 5, kids and child welfare can also get overprescribed. So that person is like, I mean, those are wonderful examples. We could go on and on. I could add restraints. I could add coercion. I could add forced outpatient treatment, ECT. I mean, there's so many problems. So what do y'all have to say about some of the problems they raised? Kevin, come on.
I don't want to go first. I'm
Oh,
spacey today. I feel like I'm getting over tangential. One thing I want to say, well, I like those questions, but I was in my head thinking, one point I wanted to make, particularly about withdrawal, and I do think generationally, Angie, particularly with the advent of social media and with the outreach that Intercompass is doing and people talking about Will Hall's book, that information is getting out there. So I don't know if we're getting a sea change, but there's a lot of people who are not finding a place with their doctor at their psychiatrist to talk about withdrawal. But this is something that I have raised in Oregon. I particularly, live in low-income housing and I'm on disability and live in the poorhouse, more or less. And one of the things so I focus on the 20% of our system that serves people in the public mental health system on Medicaid, Medicare, and indigent. And one of the things that I was thinking about, we spend about $4 billion every 2 years in Oregon on mental health, in public mental health, that include our state hospital. We spend my last information request, public records request, so we're spending $130 million on psych drugs for adults over 18, and maybe, I don't know, another 40 million, 30 million for kids or something. And I was saying, we spend so much, all of that $4 billion is all directed to one thing, which they call services, but you unpack that a little bit more, whether treatment. But when you what is the menu? What is the menu? What is the menu? All of that $4 billion is more or less directed to one therapeutic modality, and that is take this particular pill. And I said, I think we fundamentally have a responsibility. We have such a huge front door. Everybody come in and we'll get you a script, but we don't have, it's like Hotel California. We don't have a back door. We don't have, oh, you want to get off of this? You want to move? You want to choose something else? Well, sorry, that's not, we thought you were a Medicaid customer for life who's going to be on a cocktail of drugs because you got this brain disorder. We never put a back door to this place, nor even if we do have some, we've never ritualized it and put it into our system. And I think that's almost criminal, particularly for, I've known in the last 4 weeks, 3 young women who've been like, I want to get off this antidepressant. It's causing skin problems. It's causing nervous problems. It's causing menstrual problems. But where is there to go locally if somebody's got a shingle out and says, I'm a trusted professional, come on in. And that I think is missing, but I'm very hopeful. I do think, that our earth is being seeded with more opportunities, and I think that will continue to grow. And some psychiatrists here in Oregon, in fact, some of the oldest ones, a guy who just retired from our community education department said, I went to work as a psychiatrist in 1954 because I wanted to help people and give them therapy. I didn't know that I would spend the last 50 years of my life poisoning people. Now, that was like from a guy who'd been writing all these studies about the benefits of medication, et cetera, et cetera. So I do think there's sort of a crack in that. But I do think we should push our public systems for getting people on for helping people get on these. And of course, there probably is some benefit, or there wouldn't be so many people taking them. But also, too, is we have some responsibility of what happens if I don't want this treatment anymore. I want another one. And I think it's irresponsible that we don't address that.
Good point. Ebony or Martha?
Yeah, I would totally agree with what Kevin said. And it's like, I remember when I went back to work, I went to Social Security and said, you know, I'm going to work for full time. And the first thing they said is, why would you do that? Like, I was never expected to work again. And the VA, you know, says I'm 100% permanently and totally disabled. They gave up on me back in the 90s. But you know, I've experienced those things. I had a really bad tremor, really bad. Like I couldn't sign my name. I always looked like I was shaking my head no. You know, I went to a neurologist and they did all kinds of tests and they said it was the medication. My psychiatrist did not change my medication, even when they got that from the neurologist. And, you know, and I had a similar experience to what was in the film where a pharmacist said something. I'd gone for surgery and, you know, I was going to the pharmacy to pick up a medication and the pharmacist said to me, you know, well, you're on an SSRI and if you take this medication, it increases the chance you could get serotonin syndrome. And I'm like, what's serotonin syndrome? You know, and that was two different prescribers, but if the pharmacist hadn't said that, I could have had a really serious side effect from getting the drugs. So I would hope we would do better. I really enjoyed talking to residents, you know, because they're new into this. They haven't been corrupted by the system. They haven't become victims of the system. And I agree with Ange. I think the providers in the system are also victims of it. They're forced to comply just like we're forced to comply. You know, to get their paycheck, they have to do what they're told, basically, you know. So I, you know, asked a physician friend, when did administrators and insurance companies get to dictate, you know, quality medicine? But, you know, that's not something I can change. That's something they have to change. But I think someday our voices, we're going to reach that critical mass where we're going to be listened to. We're not going to be those people that, you know, get cast aside. And I hope more providers join the ranks, you know, and want to make the change. And, you know, one thing that I was talking to a group of residents, and it was more in general about peer support and how that changed my life. But they were like, well, but what do you do when you have a bad day? And I said, I talk about it. What do you do? And they were like, because you know, they're not supposed to talk about their problems. It's like, you know, that's one of the beauties, I think, of being in peer support. I can say I'm having a bad day, and that's okay. Everything's not rainbows and unicorns. And I'm okay with that. And, you know, I think we're led to believe that like we're abnormal and we should strive for normal. I don't believe that anymore. We're this unique, you know, spectrum of things, and some days, you know, we're more toward smiling and some days not, and I just try to find some balance and, you know, keep people around me that support that.
Amen, sister. So I'm mindful of the time. I think we did go a little over, but I wouldn't go back. I'm so glad we're having this conversation. So let's just go around and share any closing thoughts. Please share where people can find you, more information, maybe your favorite resources, and then we'll go ahead and close out. Also, I'm going to bring back on camera the two regional directors from Maine who hosted the screening. So who wants to go first while I bring them back on?
I can go. I'll just say thank you. I can put in the chat my email, right? I think that'll be better. And I'll just put that in the chat. But this was a great experience. I'm glad that I got to be on this panel and be a part of this film in some way and be here with you all. And I'll put all my contact info in the chat. Thank you.
And I would echo the same. I work just very part-time with Wildflower Alliance, mostly with alternatives to suicide. Been up to Maine a few times for that. And so that's the best place to contact me, and also my best resource, because even if it's not something we have at Wildflower Alliance, they really keep their eyes and ears open to where great things are going on and connect us to those things, like Pure Galaxy. So I love Pure Galaxy too, when I'm talking to my West Coast folks. So yeah, thank you all.
Yeah, Martha, you stole my plug. Laura Rose, our administrator of Pure Galaxy, I was essential in helping actually get our state to fund that. So we're very, very proud of that. That was going to be the resource I was suggesting, was Pure Galaxy. And it's not just Oregon centric. I think there's lots of national stuff on there as well. If I could suggest another resource that I've learned an awful lot for, it used to be called the Support Coalition, and now it's called Mind Freedom. It was a project started by a friend of mine about 40 years ago. I will put my thing in the chat. I actually lied. I'm on disability, but I do work part-time doing policy and consulting and stuff like that. But I'm very glad to be here, and I'm very glad to meet Ebony and Martha, my co-panelists. I love doing this stuff so I could meet a bunch of other people. Let me ask you, Angie, also, are you in a van down by the river somewhere?
Yes,
Is this
I'm
your
actually
new traveling? Are you traveling across America, taking up this cause in
mental
a
health to the people. Mental health to the people.
Awesome.
Yes. And actually, Kevin, I'll have you know, I am about 20 minutes north of Portland, Oregon, and I'm going to meet you at a food truck somewhere, and we're going to hang out outside.
Yeah, sounds awesome. Also, I look forward to Nomad Land 2, looking at psych survivors and, spreading the good
That's
news.
it. I'm going to buy a camera and film this. Oh my God, that would be so awesome. Yes, Nomad Land is very close to how I live, believe it or not. I'm in a parking lot right now, outside of Starbucks, stealing Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
So, oh my gosh. Okay, Martha, wait, you already went, Kevin went. Okay, so Catherine and Elaine, closing thoughts.
Well, I'm just thrilled that you all were here, and it was a great panel, great discussion, incredible film. I know personally I have a lot to think about and a lot to, I think the issue of support is critical.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I'll leave it there. I just, I really appreciate and thank you all for coming.
Yeah, and yes, it is a lot to think about it. And I think my heart is kind of going out to folks. There was a last question there and someone was feeling like, oh, I'm taking this and now I'm worried. It's just to encourage people to not panic, to take some time if they want to investigate this further or whatever, to do and seek support. I just want to encourage people that way, and because I was concerned that folks might, just think I should get off. And you made it clear, Angie, which I'm thankful for, that that's not what anyone is saying here at all, or to panic or feel awful in any way. Let's take time to see what the best decisions are for ourselves, we can be gradual. It's okay to be gradual in changing or not. Does that kind of sticking my neck out here a little bit?
No, I was gonna try to answer that in my closing thoughts too. So
were you okay? Well,
you said it beautifully.
Feel free to add anything.
Beautifully. Can you just tell people that may not be familiar with the Maine Peer Network, where can they find them?
Well, we are the Peer Support Specialist Network of Maine is at least for until September, we are supporting the workforce in Maine the best ways that we can with continuing education, with support. And we do have a Facebook page that people who are peer support specialists or in the work can join. We opened this up wider, beyond our community, our direct community. So I have a feeling that most people on here are familiar with us. That's my thought.
Perfect. All right. And closing thoughts for me, kind of like what Elaine said, we don't want you to panic. There's many different paths to recovery. It's all about what you want to do. It's your body. It took me 10 years to taper and to come to terms, and then 5 years of healing after that. So, don't even compare to me. What I like to say is don't believe anything we just said. Let this be the beginning of your own discovery, your own inner study. Anyway, there is on our website a reading list, a resources list. There's research that you can read. There's alternatives. There's resources for withdrawal. It's all on our website at medicatingnormal.com. We also have other panels and interviews with experts and people with lived experience on our YouTube channel. So if you just type in Medicating Normal, you'll probably find it on Google. And then if you'd like a screening like this with a community that you know, please just email us and we'll try to work it out. It's medicatingnormal@gmail.com. And I think I said it all. I just want to say thank you for bringing this conversation to your community. Yes, don't panic. There's many different paths. Let this be the beginning of your own journey. And thank you so much for spending time with us. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being who you are and doing the work and supporting others. All right.
Thank you, Angie.
Have a
Thank
good one.
you.
Bye, y'all.
Good night,
Good night.
everybody. Thanks
night.
for coming.